Hello world, today we will take a look at one of the most important features your application can have, and that is light and dark mode themes. Before we start, remember what you learned today, go further and teach others so that you can grow together. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first learning outcome of this session will be toggling between light mode and dark mode. And then we will also see how to use Redux to make this update so that it's possible for us to read the most current mode from Redux. Finally, we will see how we can be able to persist the mode in local storage with Redux Persist, so that when the user reloads your application, their pre-selected theme will be applied. In this case, we have selected the dark mode. So if we reload, we see that the dark mode is applied and it's persisted. Before we write a single line of code, let's install these three required libraries in the project's root directory. The first one is React Redux, the second one is Redux.js Toolkit, and the last one is Redux Persist. You can install them by simply copying these commands one at a time, pasting them in the terminal of your project's root directory, and hitting enter. For example, to install React Redux, simply copy this line, paste it, and hit enter, and it should install it. Then once you finish the installation for all the three libraries, you are ready to go and you can proceed from there. Now that we have installed the required libraries, let's switch our focus over to our project directory setup. The first folder we are going to add is the State Manager folder. If you don't have this folder already, please create it. This is where our state management logic for Redux will be placed, and having it like so, you have an easy time maintaining a large code base. The first file we will take a look at is the interfaces.ts file, which will contain our interfaces as well as our type definitions. In this file, we are exporting iAppTheme as well as iAppStore because these are going to be used in other parts of the application. iAppTheme will denote the type of mode that the user has selected, and it can be any type that your project needs. For example, you can add additional modes like pink, purple, etc. It's up to you by simply appending them right here. And so forth and so forth. Next, we have iAppStore. This is what will define the blueprint of the application. What I want you to note is that we have a property current mode which says the user selected mode. And it is this property which we will be updating as well as selecting from the store to persist the changes. Now for the selectors, selectors literally do what the name suggests, selecting data from the store and nothing more. However, before you begin selecting from the store, you need to decide which part of the store your selectors in this file will be targeting. And in our case, we will be targeting the root application, meaning that we will be picking the whole blueprint that we have defined in our App Store and returning it from our app selector method, and we will see how this will be used to pick the current mode in the next step. So with that in mind, we see that we have just one selector right here, select current mode, and all it does is that it returns the current mode, which is the latest one in the store. So in this case, we will pass in app selector as a parameter, and then we will pick from the state of the app selector the current mode, which will give us the most recent value that the user has updated since they changed the mode on their UI. Next, we have the slice file. What is a slice? Think of a pie. The pie can be split into a couple of slices and you get your own share of the pie. The same analogy applies here. The application state is a large pie and it can be broken down into a couple of slices from which data can be read from as well as written to. For you to be able to create a slice, you need to declare a variable and assign it to the createSlice method, which you import from Redux.js Toolkit. And this method will accept a parameter, and the parameter will be an object which has the first property here is the name of this slice. then it will require an initial state. In our case, we have defined our initial state up here, so we simply pass it and then it will be appended to the object automatically. Then you have to specify the reducers. The reducers are what will be used to update the state of the slice. If you are working on another part of the application, which is a different slice, for example, product slice or user slice, all you need to do is to specify the name here. Lastly, in this file, we are going to export two things. The first thing we are going to export are the actions, and the actions are the list of actions that will be dispatched so that they can trigger the appropriate action-specific reducers that will then update the state of the slice. The other thing we are going to return is the reducer for the slice, which mutates the current state of the application based on the received action payload. So this section here exports our action. This section here exports the reducer. And we see how the actions have been defined. In our case, we have the current mode that we need to set. So this method is called set current mode. So what it does is that it accepts the current state of the application and then an action, and this action will accept a payload, and in our case the payload is the theme that we want to set to be the new theme of our application. And as we can see, it can be either light, dark, pink or purple, and then we simply set it in our state. So by doing this, we are updating our current mode in the state to be the new mode that the user has selected. Lastly, we have the store. Here we are exporting two constants. The first constant is the store and the second one is store persistor. As we can see here, the store has been initialized to the return value of the configure store. As for the store persistor, we see that it is initialized to the return value of persist store. So when we expand the store variable, we see that it has two properties in its parameter, and the parameter that it has is an object. The first property is the reducer, the other property is the middleware. So let's start with the middleware. This is simply a configuration which has been recommended by Redux Persist so that it's possible for it to work with the Redux.js toolkit. So I encourage you to go and check this link right here. And with that, let's continue and explore what is there inside our reducer property. Expanding it, we see it's not complicated. We just have a definition right here whereby we are specifying the key. Now you notice right now the key is the root, meaning this will be the root reducer of the application. And then we have a storage, we have a state reconciler, and this is what actually makes it possible for us to decide how we are going to resolve that which has been persisted in local storage as well as that which is in the initial state. And the other parameter that we pass into this method is the app reducer. So we are passing app reducer because it's the only reducer that we have. If you had multiple slices whereby you would have had multiple reducers for different parts of the app slices, you would have had it like this. You import combined reducers and then simply pass in a list of reducers for the different slices. But for our case, because it's just the app reducer, we just have it like this. So having that in mind, let's see how we can actually introduce the store as well as the persist store in our application. How do we do that? We wrap the topmost state-aware node of our application inside our state manager components provided by React Redux and Redux Persist. And for us, this node will be the first and only child element of our application's body right here. Now notice that we have wrapped this element inside two components. The first one is provider from React Redux, and this is the one that will be passing in the store. The other one is persist get from Redux Persist, and this is the one that will be passing in the store persistor. And notice that you also have the option to have a loading component so that you can display something nice maybe when the data is being reconciled. But for our case, we don't need it, so we simply set it as null. Lastly, in this file, I want you to take note of this section right here. Notice that we have the ID for this element, and we will see where we will be using it later on. And also we have a class name, and the class name is initially set to light mode. Now that we have our state manager ready and connected to our application, let us continue to the easy part, which is the UI section. All our UI will be doing is simply selecting the current mode from the store and using it, or updating the new mode to the store. With that, let's start with the header component. In our header component, we start by defining two hooks. The first one is use path name. The second one is use dispatch. Use path name will be used to get the path the user is in and compare it with one of our links to check if a link is the active one and style it accordingly. Use dispatch will be used to dispatch our defined action set current mode. We will also be reading the current mode from our store, as well as keeping track of the current mode in the header's internal state, so that it will be possible for us to switch between the current and the new mode, and that is what these two lines will actually be doing. Then we have this handler. This is an event handler which will respond to user click events. When the user clicks to switch between the modes, it will accept the new mode that the user has selected. Then it will dispatch set current mode action, and inside it pass the new mode that the user has picked as a parameter. And this will be propagated all the way to our slice, which will then set the current mode as the value of the payload that it has received. Moving on, we see that we have this use effect. This use effect has two dependencies, meaning that it will be triggered when either of the dependencies change. The first dependency is the current mode, which we have selected from the store, and the second one is the mode which we are tracking in the header's internal state. Then we compare to check if these two modes do not match. We will be updating the class name of the element that we have found by ID. Remember our body content wrapper? This is where we will get to revisit it. And once we find a matching element, we will update the class name value of the body content wrapper by simply replacing the old class, which is the mode, with the new class, which is the current mode that we have selected from the store. Once we have updated the class name for the body content wrapper, we will go ahead and update the internal state of the mode within the header component by simply calling set mode and passing in the current mode, which is in the store. And let's actually log these two modes out so that we can see how they differ. Logging them out, and then we go back to our browser. Let's refresh this, and we see we have the current mode in the header as light, and also the current mode from the store as light. So let's clear this and we switch. We see that the mode in the header is light and the current mode from the store is dark. And then we switch back, we see is the vice versa. So our header will always remember the previous mode, and then the store will always have the most recent mode. Now that we have seen how the modes are persisted and updated, let's see how we can use these modes to change the UI by manipulating our HTML elements based on the current mode that the user has selected. To be able to do this, I want to bring to your attention one key addition that we are making to our HTML elements class names. Notice that alongside the existing class, we are also adding a new class, and the class will be referred to by the variable of mode, and this mode, if you recall, is the internal state for the mode. So this means that when we take a look at our header style, we see that we have our existing classes and we are using the BEM pattern, but then we are also adding the mode, you see, like this. So in addition to the existing classes which this element has, we are going to also add an additional class, and that class will denote the mode that the user has selected. And to be able to see this in action, let's head over to the browser and see how the class will be added and removed as the user interacts with the toggle button. So starting with the body content wrapper, we see that the default class is light, but then when we switch, we see that the class changes to dark mode, and then when it changes to dark mode, the black color appears on the background of the page. Let's inspect our links right here, and we see that the same behavior is also evident. Here we have the header element wrapper, and then it also has an additional class of dark. But if we switch to the light mode, we see everything changes to light, and so forth and so forth. So that means if you want to style something based on the current mode, all you need to do is to simply append the current mode to the list of classes for that specific element. So what if you want to change content? You want to change content based on the current mode. And for content, let's take a look at this simple image right here. This image appears in a different way when we switch to the dark mode. Question is, how do we achieve this? It is so simple. Opening our profile component, we begin by importing the images which we are going to need, the dark profile pic and the light profile pic. Then we select the current mode from the store. After that, we use the current mode to decide from which path the image component is going to load the image that we want to show. In this case, if the current mode is light, then we are going to show the light profile pic. Otherwise, we are going to show the dark profile pic. As for the appearance of the other elements, we are using the logic we just discussed in the header component, so nothing changes in that part. For example, here we are just appending the current mode to our if element, and then everything in this element will respond based on the current mode that we have. As you can see, you can not only change the appearance, but you can also change the content, which should appear based on the mode which the user has selected. I hope you learned something new today, and what you just learned, once again, teach a friend or two that you may grow together. And with that, until the next one.